Hey, listeners, ready to transform your sleep? Cozy Earth is all about lasting luxury and comfort. Their bamboo sheets have been called the world's softest sheets, cooling, moisture wicking, and unbelievably soft. And I can tell you they get better with every wash. And they have a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty.
But it doesn't stop there. They have bath, sleepwear, loungewears, and even skincare. Free shipping on orders of $50 or more.
Make sure you go to cozyearth.com, use our code INFOGO at checkout to save 21% off. You can find all of this in the show notes. Welcome to the podcast. I'm William.
And I'm Kat.
And keeping up with our 250 years of the United States, July 4th, everybody's in the sun having some fun, but you probably need some sunscreen, right?
Always.
Well, especially if you're like me, I don't tan, I blister.
I mean, I tan pretty good, but at some point I do burn.
No, I just burn. I
Yeah.
just walk out and I'm like, boom, blistered.
Yeah, that's my husband too.
But I feel his pain. So,
He, sorry, as he's getting older though, he can't his arms and neck are okay, but anything else he starts breaking out in hives now.
He's allergic to the sun.
Yeah. Like legs, everything, he starts itching, he can't handle it.
So he's the opposite of Superman.
Right.
Sorry, I'll edit that out. All right, so here we go. So today we're going to dive into something most all of us should use, especially if you're going out in the sun. It sits on store shelves, fills beach bags, and gets recommended by every dermatologist on the planet. But what if I told you that the sunscreen available to Americans might not be the best sunscreen available in the world?
Well, that raises some fascinating questions. Why do Americans spend billions of dollars on sunscreen every year, yet often have fewer choices than people living in, say, Europe, Australia, Japan, or even South Korea? Is sunscreen overseas actually better, or is it just another internet myth? And if these newer sunscreen ingredients have been used safely around the world for years, why can't you walk into your local pharmacy and buy them in the United States?
Those are some great questions. We're gonna take a journey to find the answer to these questions, right? We're gonna go through science, skin cancer research, government regulations, pharmaceutical law, and how the Food and Drug Administration approval process can stretch across decades. And we'll also discover why some sunscreen ingredients available in Europe today were first submitted to American regulators years ago, and why Australia has become a global leader in sun protection, and why dermatologists continue to debate whether America's sunscreen rules are protecting consumers or holding consumers back.
So, before we can understand why sunscreen is regulated so differently around the world, we have to go back thousands of years. Believe it or not, the desire to protect skin from the sun isn't a modern invention. Long before SPF numbers, beach umbrellas, and spray on sunscreens, ancient civilizations were already searching for ways to shield themselves from the sun's powerful rays.
The ancient Egypt,
Egyptians.
yeah. So the ancient Egyptians, not today's Egyptians, but they were known for their advances in medicine and cosmetics. They used natural ingredients such as rice bran, jasmine, and lupine extracts in an effort to protect and preserve their skin. In ancient Greece, olive oil was commonly applied to the skin. Probably not the best sun protection.
It sounds more like a tanning oil.
Hey man, just go get you some of that Hawaiian tropics off the shelf. You're gonna be good. So, while we know olive oil offers very little true UV protection, it does reflect humanity's long-standing effort to find solutions against the sun. Indigenous cultures around the world also developed their own methods, often using mineral-rich clays, muds, and other natural substances that really created a physical barrier between their skin and the intense sunlight. I'd say mud has a better protection than olive oil, per se, maybe.
For if we're not just tanning with it, I think mud was probably be your better option as well.
Yeah.
But fast forward to the 1930s and 40s, and sunscreen began to take a form we could recognize today. World War II played a surprisingly important role in this development. The soldiers stationed in tropical regions faced severe sunburns that affected morale and effectiveness. No kidding. Anybody else get burned so bad they just couldn't function? The military kind of needed a solution, right? One of those solutions came from a pharmacist named Benjamin Green, who developed a thick red petroleum based substance known as Red Vet Pet, short for Red Veterinary Petroleum.
Red Vet Pet.
Right.
This sounds like it was pretty durable.
It wasn't pretty, it wasn't comfortable, and it certainly wasn't something you'd want to wear on the beach, but it worked. Over time, that military innovation evolved into one of the most recognizable sunscreen brands in the world, Coppertone. Factoid.
But yeah, I guess that might be a whole dash of info somewhere down the road.
Yes.
But but then something interesting happened after the war. For much of history, pale skin had been associated with wealth and status because, well, it suggested that that person didn't have to work outdoors. But beginning in the 1950s and continuing through the 80s, a suntan became a symbol of health, leisure, and attractiveness. If you were tan, people assumed you had spent time on a beach or at a resort, or you were just enjoying, an active lifestyle. Magazines celebrated it, Hollywood promoted it, and millions of people chased the perfect bronze glow.
I mean, I was just kind of born with that, unfortunately. I am
Right.
pale right now.
For me, I was born with a pale white skin that would be like, hey, this dude doesn't have to work, but unfortunately he does.
Oh. So the problem was that our understanding of ultraviolet radiation was still developing. Many people knew that severe sunburns were bad, but few really understood the long term effects of repeated sun exposure. Wrinkles, premature aging, and skin cancer were risks that were often unrecognized or were simply ignored. So, as tanning grew more popular, so did rates of skin cancer, setting the stage for major public health challenge that still continues today.
And today, sunscreen has become a multi-billion-dollar global industry. Walk into a store in the United States, Australia, France, Japan, or South Korea, and you'll find the shelves are packed with products promising protection from the sun. Yet, the way people use sunscreen varies dramatically depending on where you live. So, for instance, in Australia, sunscreen is viewed almost as a daily necessity because of the country's intense UV exposure. In many Asian countries, sunscreen is often part of a daily skincare routine. In Europe, consumers tend to focus heavily on protection against skin aging, while here in the United States, sunscreen is commonly associated with vacations, pools, beaches, and if you're going to be outdoors.
What started as ancient civilizations smearing natural ingredients, quote unquote, on their skin grown into global and has grown into a global industry built on science, health, beauty, and prevention.
Now that Kat and I have kind of covered the history, let's get into the real enemy in this story, and that is the sun itself. The invisible radiation that is constantly pouring down on us every single day. You can't see it, you can't smell it, and you usually can't feel it until after the damage is already done, right?
Right.
And scientists call it ultraviolet radiation or UV radiation. And understanding it is the key to understanding why sunscreen exists in the first place. And if you're Superman, you don't need it. You can just soak those rays right up.
Right. Like the best plant person there ever
Well,
was.
unfortunately, I don't know anybody that's from Krypton or anybody
No,
named Clark for that matter.
me either. It's kind of sad, actually.
It really is. I do know some Kents, but none of them are named Clark.
Lame.
Hmm.
Apparently, we need to find a Clark friend.
If your name is Clark and you need some friends, we're open.
Think of ultraviolet radiation as an invisible spectrum of energy emitted by the sun. Some of it helps our bodies produce vitamin D, but too much exposure can damage our skin in ways that range from a mild sunburn to life threatening skin cancer. The two types we care about most are a UVA and UVB, and while they sound similar, they behave very differently.
So let's start with the UVA rays. If UV radiation were a burglar, UVA would be the sneaky thief that slips in through a side window and quietly steals all of your valuables over time. UVA, well, they're the rays that penetrate deeply into the skin, reaching layers that the UVB rays can't. They are largely responsible for premature aging, wrinkles, sagging skin, those dark spots you see. Even more concerning, scientists know that long-term exposure to UVA radiation, well, it contributes to skin cancer risk. Unlike sunburn, which gets your attention immediately, UVA damage, it can take decades to reveal itself.
UVB rays, on the other hand, are the loud and obvious criminals. These are the rays responsible for the painful red sunburn you get after spending too much time outside without protection. UVB rays don't penetrate as deeply as UVA rays, but they pack enough energy to directly damage the DNA inside your skin cells. And over time, that DNA damage can accumulate and increase the risk of developing skin cancer. While your skin turns red and painful after a day at the beach, that's your body's alarm system telling you that damage has already occurred.
And this kind of brings us to one of the biggest misconceptions in sunscreen marketing. SPF, most people assume that a higher SPF means dramatically better protection, but the reality is a little more complicated. SPF, or sun protection factor, primarily measures protection against UVB rays, the sunburn causing rays, right? SPF 30, it only really blocks 97% of UVB radiation. SPF 50 blocks about 98%. So even SPF 100 doesn't provide twice the protection of SPF 50. The numbers just get bigger, but the increase in protection becomes, well, surprisingly small. I mean, if you think about from 30 to 50, you're only getting 1%. And then from 50 to 100, you're probably only getting another percent.
So you're telling me right now that the difference between 30 and 100 is a
Nothing,
huge price markup for no reason?
pretty much.
Awesome.
30 is,
Consider
yeah, 30 is your best bet, right?
right.
Or
It's
50, I guess.
if you really want that extra 1%. Yep.
Mhm.
Many consumers see SPF 100 and assume they're practically invincible. In reality, no sunscreen blocks 100% of UV rays, and high SPF numbers can sometimes create a false sense of security. People stay outside longer, reapply less often, and end up receiving more total UV exposure than they realize.
And this is where the conversation gets really interesting because for years, people focused almost entirely on avoiding sunburn. If they didn't turn red, they assumed they were safe. But that's not really the truth. Remember, UVA, well, those rays don't always leave obvious evidence behind. You spend years accumulating damage without seeing any immediate warning signs.
So imagine two people spending the same amount of time in the sun. One gets badly sunburned and learns a painful lesson. The other never The other never burns at all and believes they're perfectly protected. Yet both may be accumulating long-term skin damage. That's why modern dermatologists place so much emphasis on broad spectrum protection sunscreens that protect against both UVA and UVB radiation.
So the challenge is not that all sunscreens are equally effective at blocking UVA rays. In fact, one of the biggest criticisms of the American sunscreen of the sunscreen market is that many countries offer newer ingredients that are specially designed to provide stronger UVA protection. And that really brings us directly to the question at the heart of today's episode. If UVA protection is so important, why do many experts believe that some of the biggest sunscreen technology isn't even available in the United States? And Kat and I are going to answer that in this episode.
We just have to travel halfway around the world to a country where the sun is so intense that sunscreen isn't just a recommendation, it's practically a way of life.
You must be talking about Crocodile Dundee's place.
Yeah, Steve Irwin.
Hmm. Steve, oh man, I loved him.
Oh, may he rest in peace.
Yeah.
I watch his kids on Facebook Reels and stuff like that, and I'm so glad they're continuing in his footsteps. Makes me want to cry every time I see them.
But did you ever watch Crocodile Dundee?
That's not a knife. This is a knife, right?
No, he goes, that's not a knife. This is a knife. And those guys on the subway break out running.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
You know, if there's one country that understands that the dangers of the sun better than almost any other, it's got to be Australia. In fact, Australia is often referred to as the skin cancer capital of the world, and that's not because Australians love the sun more than anyone else, although many certainly enjoy their beaches and outdoor lifestyle. The real reason is geography. Much of Australia's population lives under intense sunlight, and because of its location and atmospheric conditions, UV levels can reach extreme levels that many Americans never even experience. So, for generations, Australians have lived with the reality that too much sun exposure can have serious consequences.
And so by the 70s and 80s, health officials realized that they had a growing public health crisis on their hands, right? Skin cancer rates were climbing, and millions of people were spending long hours outdoors with little protection. Australia, it needed a solution, and what followed became one of the most successful public health campaigns in history.
History. So, the campaign was simple, memorable, and impossible to forget. Slip, slop, slap. Slip,
Wait a minute. Slip, slop, slap.
yep. Slip on a shirt, slop on sunscreen, and slap on a hat. The catchy slogan appeared on television, radio, schools, and even public events across the country. Entire generations of Australians grew up hearing those three words. Unlike many public awareness campaigns that fade away after a few years, Slip, Slop, Slap became part of the national culture. It transformed sunscreen from an occasional beach accessory to a daily habit.
From now on, when me and my family are going to the beach or outside or having those outdoor activities, I'm gonna be like slip, slop, and slap, and they're gonna look at me and like, what?
I mean, I feel like just knowing you, they might look at you like that sometimes anyway.
But education was only, you notice I'm just kind of moving ahead, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's
Okay.
okay.
Oh, yeah. All right. So, but education was only part of the story. Australia also, well, it demanded more from the products they had. Regulators established some of the world's strictest sunscreen standards, requiring extensive testing before products could ever be sold. Manufacturers couldn't just simply make claims that protection and hope consumers believe them. Products had to prove they worked under rigorous conditions. Sunscreens were evaluated not only for SPF performance, but also for how well they protected against UVA radiation, the type of UVA exposure responsible for much of the skin aging and long term damage that occurs beneath the surface.
Australian standards also focused heavily on real world performance. After all, sunscreen that works perfectly in a laboratory isn't very useful if it fails when someone is swimming, sweating, surfing, or working outdoors,
Or
which
chasing gators.
chasing gators, chasing snakes, going to look at the dung beetles, looking at kangaroos. There's a lot of surface area and aminals in Australia. And it's hot there. It's really hot there.
We should really do one on kangaroos.
Ooh,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Shopping list.
Yes, yes.
And koala bears.
Ah, marsupials.
Yes. Anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to steal your thunder
That's okay.
from down under.
I was just thinking that. No, you didn't. You stole the words right out of my mouth. How rude.
Sorry. Not sorry. It was satisfying. I got to tell you, it really was satisfying.
Oh, it was good. This led to strict water resistance testing and durability requirements that pushed manufacturers to develop stronger and more reliable formulas. Broad spectrum protection became a central expectation, ensuring that consumers were protected from both UVA and UVB radiation, rather than just the rays that cause the sunburn.
Hmm. The country's intense focus on sun safety, well, it also encouraged innovation because manufacturers competed to create products that offered stronger protection while remaining comfortable enough for daily use. Researchers studied how sunscreens performed in extreme conditions, and consumer education programs, they taught people not only which products to use, but how to use them properly. Australians learned that sunscreen, it isn't magic. It has to be applied correctly, applied generously, and reapplied regularly to provide effective protection.
Today, many dermatologists around the world point to Australia as a model for sun protection. It's not necessarily because every Australian sunscreen is automatically superior to products sold elsewhere. Rather, it's because Australia has spent decades treating sun protection as a public health priority. The combination of strict standards, extensive testing, public education, and relentless innovation has created a culture where sunscreen performance really matters.
And that's where things get especially interesting for our story. While Australia was building one of the most advanced sunscreen systems in the world, scientists in Europe and Asia were taking sunscreen technology in a different direction. Instead of focusing only on stronger protection, they began developing entirely new UV filters that many experts believe offer better UVA coverage, improved stability, and more pleasant user experience. So the question is, if these innovations exist, why aren't Americans using them too? And I think before we get into any of that, Kat, I say I'm going to grab a popsicle and apply some sunscreen and kick back on the beach.
Wow, that sounds like a good time. What beach?
I don't know, but it's gonna have plenty of Coke, so you might not want to go.
Well, I can always bring my home Pepsi, BYOP, if you will.
Oh, okay. I don't know. We can pick any beach.
Sounds
We can
good.
we can go anywhere. But anyway, we'll be right back. Now that we're back from the beach, we both enjoy.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
I came across Big Fork Brands recently, and it's become one of those finds you actually want to tell people about, and you don't find that often. Okay. They're doing bacon sausage, plus these really solid pork jerky snacks and Chicago style sauces. Basically, upgrade anything you throw them on burgers, hot dogs, fries, throw it on there. It works.
But I bet it's packed full of junk.
Actually, it's made with clean ingredients and real care. That's small batch with no shortcuts, and people are obsessed with the flavor. You can go over to bigforkbrands.com, use our code INFOGO at checkout, and get 20% off anything on the site.
You can find the link and our code in the show notes. A popsicle and laughed about Coke and Pepsi.
Yes, yes. Why Europe and Asia have better sunscreen options? Well, while Australia focused on strict performance standards and public health campaigns, Europe and Asia were quietly building something different that many experts now call the next generation of sunscreen. So instead of treating sunscreen as something you only use at the beach, these regions began designing it as something you could wear every single day. And that shift really changed everything.
In Europe, the philosophy behind sunscreen development took a very practical turn. Regulators and manufacturers placed a strong emphasis on UVA protection, recognizing early on that aging, pigmentation, and long term skin damage were just as important as preventing sunburn. But there was another priority that shaped the entire market: cosmetic elegance. In other words, sunscreen had to feel good on the skin. If people hated it or if it looked or felt, icky, they just simply wouldn't use it consistently. So European sunscreens, well, they evolved to be lighter, smoother, and far more wearable, encouraging daily use rather than occasional application. Because here in the US, it's pasty white and does not feel good at all. Sorry, I didn't.
You're good. I mean, I don't really like using sunscreen either, but I definitely put it on my kids.
Well, I have to use it. If I don't, I'm just gonna turn red. Well, I mean, you've seen it.
Yes. Yes, I have. And Casey gets pretty burnt too, and he also is really bad about wearing the sunscreen, and he
Yeah.
breaks out in hives. So, anyway, meanwhile, in Asia, particularly in Japan and South Korea, sunscreen underwent what many call a true innovation revolution. These markets didn't just want protection, they wanted skincare that felt invisible. Heavy, greasy lotions were replaced with feather light textures. Thick white creams were replaced with elegant fluids, gels, and emulsions that disappeared into the skin within seconds. The goal was simple but powerful. Sunscreen should not feel like sunscreen at all.
I love it. One of the most noticeable breakthroughs in Asian sunscreen development was the emulsion of the white cast. That chalky residue left behind by many traditional mineral sunscreens. This improvement alone, well, it transformed how many people use sunscreen, especially in everyday life and under makeup. Instead of being something you had to tolerate, sunscreen, well, it became something you could comfortably integrate into your skincare routine without thinking twice.
But behind these improvements is where things get even more interesting. Europe and Asia gained access to a newer generation of UV filters that are not widely available in the US. Ingredients such as Tinosorb S, Tinosorb M, Uvinol A plus, and Uvinol T 150 represent some of the most advanced sunscreen technology currently in use around the world.
Wow. These filters offer several advantages. First, they provide stronger and more balanced UVA protection, helping fill in the gaps left by older formulations. Second, they tend to be more photostable, meaning they don't break down as quickly when exposed to sunlight. And this really allows for a longer lasting protection. And third, they often work in combination with other filters to create broader and more reliable coverage across the UV spectrum. And finally, they allow formulators to create sunscreens that feel, well, more pleasant on the skin than what most of our listeners experience.
But perhaps the most important difference isn't just technical, it's behavioral. People are far more likely to use sunscreen consistently when it feels comfortable, of course. European and Asian formulas tend to be non greasy, fat absorbing, and compatible with makeup and daily skincare routines, which sounds pretty cool.
Yes.
Commuting, working indoors near windows, walking through cities, and even just daily exposure that most people don't even think about.
In other words, sunscreen in these regions, well, they aren't just preventing beach burns. It's about everyday skin health, appearance, and long term protection. When something feels good to wear, people actually wear it. And when people actually wear it, protection becomes far more effective for everyday people.
If they
Finish.
want to wear it, they'll wear it.
Well, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't like the greasy feeling that it leaves me, but I mean, I have to wear it, especially if I'm fishing on the coast or fishing the lakes and rivers, or, I'm an outdoorsy person. I like to hike. And in my bag, I keep all different kinds of sunscreen.
I bet.
Yeah.
You know, this raises an uncomfortable question for the US. If these newer filters exist and if they're widely used and trusted in other countries, why aren't they available to American consumers? The answer isn't about science alone, it's really about regulation, approval timelines, and a system that treats sunscreen more like a drug than a cosmetic product.
That really brings us to the FDA because now we get to the part of the story that explains almost everything. And it has nothing to do with whether sunscreen works and everything to do with how it's regulated.
In most of Europe, sunscreen is treated like a cosmetic product. That means it's regulated in a way similar to moisturizer, shampoo, or makeup. Companies still have to meet safety standards, of course, but the path to getting new sunscreen ingredient approved and onto store shelves is relatively straightforward compared to the US.
Here in America, sunscreen lives in a very different world because sunscreen is regulated by the Food and Drug Administration or the FDA. That might sound like a small technical detail, but it really changes everything because once sunscreen is classified as a drug, it isn't just about looking good on the skin or feeling comfortable, it's about making medical claims. Sunscreen in the United States, well, it is officially expected to prevent sunburn and help reduce the risk of skin cancer. Those are serious health claims, and they require a much higher level of scrutiny.
So, to approve a new sunscreen active ingredient in the United States, manufacturers must go through an extensive and often slow process. That includes detailed safety studies, long-term exposure research, toxicology testing, and rigorous manufacturing reviews. Regulators aren't just asking, does it work? They're asking, is it absolutely safe for long-term widespread human use under real-world conditions?
We did something with the FDA on another episode when we talked about the process of how it works for like a drug or something.
Was that black box drugs?
Maybe. But yeah, I can't remember. But on paper, that level of caution makes sense. Sunscreen is something that people apply to large areas of skin, often daily, sometimes starting in childhood. So the FDA's responsibility is to make sure nothing harmful slips through the name of the innovation. But in practice, the system really creates a massive bottleneck.
And here's where the frustration begins. Many sunscreen ingredients that have been used safely in Europe and Asia for decades still cannot be sold in the United States without going through this separate, lengthy FDA approval process. These ingredients aren't experimental. They've been tested, used by millions of people, and incorporated into products that are widely tested around the world. Yet, in the US, they often remain stuck in regulatory reviews for years or even decades.
Decades. Think about that. Decades. So the result is a growing gap between the American sunscreen market and much of, well, actually the rest of the world. While European and Asian consumers gain access to newer UV filters and more advanced formulations, well, Americans, well, they're often left choosing from a smaller, older set of active ingredients. It's not that the US sunscreens are ineffective. They absolutely worked when used properly. But the pace of innovation is what we're talking about because it's very noticeably slower than the rest of the world. And, really, the heart of the debate is the FDA's cautionary approach. Is it protecting consumers from unknown risk, or is it unintentionally limiting access to better protection?
That is a good question.
I've seen it on all different kind of social media platforms, which is really what brought this episode about. That and the FDA has approved a new drug for sunscreen. It is a very fascinating question because I want to be protected as much as I can from UVA rays, as well as not getting sunburn either, though.
Yeah, that part.
It doesn't feel good.
No. I've only like really burned probably a handful of times, like maybe 3.
Oh, and most recent memory,
Ugh. He said that was like this month. What are you talking about?
actually, no, it wasn't this month. But remember when I came to work and I had like the raccoon eyes where my sunglasses were at? It was white and everything else was like beet red.
Oh, I know.
Uh,
Yes. It looked like it hurt to move any kind of facial muscle.
it really did.
Mm. Well, by the time we reached the 2010s, frustration inside the sunscreen world had been building for years. Dermatologists, scientists, and cosmetic chemists were all asking the same simple question. If these sunscreen ingredients are already being used safely in Europe, Japan, and Australia, why can't American consumers access them too?
This wasn't a small industry complaint. It was a global scientific debate. Many of these UV filters have been in use for decades overseas, tested on millions of people, and incorporated into everyday skincare routines. Yet in the United States, they were still stuck behind a wall of regulatory review.
Well, in response to growing pressure, Congress passed the Sunscreen Innovation Act in 2014. The goals sounded simple and promising: create a faster pathway for reviewing and approving new sunscreen ingredients that were already widely used in other countries. It was designed to bridge the gap between international innovation and American regulation, and to bring newer, more advanced UV filters to the US consumers without unnecessary delay.
But what happened next was far more complicated than anyone ever expected. Instead of dramatically speeding up approvals, the process remained slow and complex. Reviews continued, but so did requests for additional data. Regulators often asked for more long term safety innovation, more detailed toxicology studies, and more extensive documentation on how ingredients behave under, well, prolonged real world exposure. From the FDA's perspective, this wasn't resistance, it was responsibility. When a product is applied to a large area of skin repeatedly for years or even decades, the margin for error, it becomes extremely small.
From the industry side, however, the frustration only grew. Companies argued that meeting these additional requirements was extremely expensive and time consuming, especially for ingredients that had already been studied and used safely in other parts of the world. Instead of a streamlined approval pathway, many saw a system that still required nearly the same level of effort as developing a brand new drug from scratch. I almost said Doug.
Doug from scratch?
Yeah,
Wasn't there a cartoon named Doug?
yes.
Okay. So the FDA's position, well, it remained consistent. Sunscreen is a drug in the United States, and any ingredient that makes it into the market must meet the highest possible safety standards. And in their view, caution isn't a barrier, it's protection. The agency's responsibility is not just to approve effective ingredients, but to ensure that nothing harmful reaches consumers, even after decades of use abroad.
This created a fundamental tension that still exists today. On one side, there are those who believe the system moves too slowly, potentially delaying access to safer, more effective, and more comfortable sunscreen options. On the other side are those who believe that speed should never come at the expense of long term safety, especially for products used so widely across the population.
And that's where the debate becomes, well, genuinely difficult because both sides are asking valid questions. Is it more dangerous to delay access to newer UV filters that could, well, improve protection and increase sunscreen use? Or is it more dangerous to approve ingredients too quickly without really fully understanding their long-term effects on the human health? There's really no simple answer.
At this point in the story, most dermatologists around the world actually agree on something surprisingly simple, but incredibly important. The best sunscreen is not the one with the highest SPF, the newest technology, or even the fanciest marketing. It's the one you actually use. Because in real life, sunscreen only works if it makes it onto your skin and stays there.
In the United States, the active ingredients currently available are still highly effective when used correctly. The most common include zinc oxide, titanium dioxide, and avobenzone. Each of these plays a role in protecting the skin from ultraviolet radiation. And when combined properly, they can provide strong, broad spectrum coverage.
Mineral sunscreens, especially those containing zinc oxide and titanium dioxide, have built a strong reputation among dermatologists for their safety profile. These ingredients sit on top of the skin and physically block or scatter UV rays before they can penetrate deeper layers. Because they're not absorbed into the bloodstream in the same way some chemical filters can be, they are often viewed as extremely stable and well tolerated options for long term use. But like everything in skincare, there is a trade off.
One of the biggest weaknesses of mineral sunscreens is cosmetic. Many people dislike the thick texture, the chalky finish, or what's often called the white cast. What can make, skin look pale or ashy, ashy, especially on deeper skin tones, even when the protection is excellent. If a product feels heavy, greasy, or visibly unappealing, people, well, they're probably not going to use it consistently.
Chemical filters like avobenzone help solve some of these issues by creating lighter, more elegant formulas that absorb into the skin more easily. These tend to feel better for daily wear, especially under makeup or in humid conditions. But even these have limitations, particularly when it comes to stability and long term UVA performance, unless carefully formulated with other stabilizing ingredients.
And this is where dermatologists start to lean into a bigger conversation. Many experts aren't necessarily saying that US sunscreens are bad. Instead, they're saying the real issue is choice and consistency. When people have access to sunscreens that feel good, blend easily, and disappear on the skin, they are far more likely to apply them every single day, not just when they go to the beach or pool or fishing or outside hiking.
But that behavioral difference really matters more than most people realize. Skin cancer prevention isn't just about having the perfect formula in a lab, it's about real humans actually using it every morning, reapplying it during the day, and making it part of their routine in the same way they brush their teeth.
So when dermatologists talk about wanting more sunscreen options, it's not about chasing novelty. It's about improving compliance, getting more people to actually wear protection consistently. Better textures, better cosmetic finishes, and broader UVA protection, well, they all lead to one outcome: more people using it daily, less long term damage, and better public health outcomes.
In the end, most skin experts come back to the same grounded message. The perfect sunscreen isn't the most advanced one sitting on the shelf somewhere overseas or locked behind regulatory approval. The perfect sunscreen is the one that fits into your life so well that you don't even think about skipping it.
So, as we look toward the future of sunscreen, one thing becomes clear very quickly. We are only at the beginning of what's possible. Around the world, scientists are already working on the next generation of sun protection technology, and that goes far beyond simply preventing sunburn. One exciting area of research involves DNA repair enzymes. Instead of only blocking UV damage, these ingredients aim to help, the skin repair damage after it occurs, essentially giving your skin a biological second chance after sun exposure. I love that.
Right, that sounds pretty neat.
It does.
At the same time, researchers are developing even more advanced UV filters that could offer broader and more stable protection than what most people currently use today. And these filters are designed to be more photostable, longer lasting, and more effective across both UVA and UVB ranges, closing the gaps that still exist in many older formulations.
But the innovation doesn't stop at ultraviolet light. Scientists are now also studying protection against infrared radiation. And this is the heat you feel from the sun, and even blue light from screens and artificial lighting. While the long term effects of these exposures are still being studied, there is growing interest in whether that they contribute to skin aging, pigmentation changes, or overall skin health.
As sunscreen technology evolves, another major shift is also beginning to take shape: personalization. So, in the future, sunscreen may not be a one size fits all product sitting on a shelf. Instead, we may see skin specific formulas tailored to your exact skin type, environment, and lifestyle. Imagine a sunscreen designed specifically for oily skin in humid climates, or a different formula optimized for dry skin in colder regions. Even more futuristic is the idea of AI driven skin analysis, where apps scan your skin and recommend or even generate a customized sunscreen blend built just for you.
AI. This kind of personalization could completely change how we think about sun protection. Instead of guessing which SPF to buy or which formula will feel best, technology, well, it can help match the best product directly to your skin's needs in real time. But no matter how advanced science becomes, The biggest question may still come down to regulation and access.
In the United States, the future of sunscreen will likely depend on whether regulatory systems evolve to keep pace with the global innovation. That could mean modernizing approval pathways, allowing faster review of internally proven ingredients, and increasing cooperation with regulatory agencies in Europe, Asia, and Australia.
Because right now, the challenge isn't just inventing better sunscreen, it's making sure people actually use the sunscreen that they have. Which brings us to full circle to the heart of this entire conversation. Sunscreen isn't just a product, it's a public health tool. And as science continues to push forward, the real breakthrough, well, it may not be what goes into sunscreen, but how quickly it reaches the people who need it the most.
Imagine if the safest seatbelt in the world had already been used by millions of people overseas for 20 years, but Americans still couldn't buy it.
Wow. We should just end the episode right here
Yes.
because that really captures the sunscreen debate in a nutshell. The FDA's mission is to protect public health, and caution, well, it has undeniable value. Yet many scientists, dermatologists, and consumers argue that excessive delays may prevent Americans from accessing newer technologies that could, well, improve protection and encourage more people to wear sunscreen consistently.
The ultimate lesson here isn't that American sunscreen is bad. In fact, today's US sunscreens can be highly effective when used correctly, or even used at all. The real question is whether Americans should have access to the same advanced sunscreen technologies already available throughout Europe, Australia, Japan, and South Korea. Because when it comes to preventing skin cancer, wrinkles, and sun damage, protection today may be worth more than waiting for perfection tomorrow.
Hmm. I love your seatbelt analogy.
Me too.
I I really liked this episode. I thought it was very fascinating, especially the FPF. I always thought the higher the better. After 30, it really doesn't matter.
Right. It's
I
kind of
mean,
nice to know.
yeah,
You
I
don't
mean,
have to pay
honestly and
that
truly.
extra $10. Sorry.
No, 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 you're fine. I mean, maybe we do a whole dash on the SPFs because what is the fives, the tens and stuff?
I guess the lowest SPF you can get and still tan. But I agree.
Might might as well just get some olive oil at that point.
Indeed. My
Don't. First of all, I was just joking about the olive oil. Don't do that.
No, you don't actually want to fry.
No, you really don't, because that's exactly what you're going to do.
Right.
But if you would like to support this podcast, tell a friend and help get the word out.
If you would like to support the show, you can do so at Patreon or take advantage of our sponsors. Those links are in the show notes.
Kat and I always want to say thank you for listening, whether you've been with us from day one or just tuning in.
Thank you.
Join the Facebook group at Info on the Go,
Over there, you can get to know us.
or just ask us a question.
But whatever you do, follow us wherever you get this podcast.
Send us some more of that fan mail. We love that stuff. But we ask that you leave us a review.
And leaving that review really does help others find us. You could also email us directly at
infoonthegopodcast@gmail.com.
all of those links are in the show notes. Till next time.
Stay curious. Hey, I got our email address right.
You did. Good job.
I deserve a pat on the back.
You do.
Anyway. Every morning starts with a choice. Don't settle for just coffee. Rise up with strong coffee. Meet the world's strongest cup of joe. Strong isn't just a drink, it's a movement. And strong stands for striving to reach our natural greatness.
Born from one simple need to be better. They rebuilt coffee from the ground up, infusing organic coffee with collagen, protein, nootropics, and functional ingredients that fuel your body and sharpen your mind. There's no crash, no compromises, just clean energy, focus, and flavor that fires you up.
Whether you're chasing kids, chasing goals, or chasing greatness, don't just wake up, rise up. Strong coffee, the world's strongest cup of joe, for a world ready to be better.
Use code INFOGO at checkout to save 15%.